The NBA is too soft, according to Gary Payton, a legendary defensive point guard, a wizard of the NBA defensive, reigning supreme in the 1990s, played for the Seattle Supersonics amongst other teams. Francis, this was his tweet. I could never play basketball in this soft era. All my contract money would go towards fines. Lol. You know, I don't think you needed the lol at the end.
I think he made a significant point with that.
I think haha would have worked.
Or an explanation.
Or a crying, laughing face.
I like that, Jason. Welcome to the modern era.
Era with the emojis. Oh. So Gary Payton, this is not the first we've heard, not just from guys like Gary Payton, but Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith on TNT NBA basketball panel talk about this a decent amount. Shaq as well. So Francis, first little history lesson, right? The basketball in the 1990s was much different than we see today. It actually basketball now flows in a much more open system than it did in the 90s because of certain rules like hand checking and basically forearm checking. I actually made a little card for you, Francis, and this came from a great article from David Aldridge back in 2009, not 1999, 2009, in which he started breaking down what the major differences and why the NBA started to transition from harder to a softer NBA. 1990, it started with, if I'm correct, increased penalties for flagrant fouls, which then led to increased penalties for fighting in 93. The implementation of the 5-point rule, which has to do with racking up enough flagrant fouls, you get suspended or fined even more. Removal of hand checking in 94 and the removal of using forearms to defend players facing the basket in 97 were the big changes. Eliminated rerouting players off the ball in 1999. Basically, I can't just fucking push you off the ball as much as I want to. And defensive 3-second violation was added in 2001. What did this make change in the NBA? Well, for some coaches, it said it took all the hard, real style of defense out of basketball. But the reality is it actually made guys play defense with their feet instead of their upper body. So I'm a proponent of somebody who believes that the removal of hand checking was a great thing because guys were getting so injured. And we'll throw in a video or two of Michael Jordan's legendary hand checks.
Come right back to Kemp. Dump it in low. Let him go again. Sonics have missed 7 of the last 8 shot attempts. Payton going at Jordan.
Dennis Rodman, when he played for the Pistons, even more legendary. I'm talking like hand checking to the point of taking your hand, putting it on someone's chest when they're midair, and it looks like they're throwing them.
Yeah.
That was a legal move. They stopped that from happening. So even more interesting was Doc Rivers' quote, who was another player back in the 80s, 90s, now coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, who said the first year they took my hand check away, the next year they took our forearm away, and then I retired. I was done. I was like, I've got to move my feet. I quit. This is no fun anymore. Yeah. Which I thought that was such an interesting quote from Doc Rivers. And he's not the only one that thought that. Almost all the Gary Paytons of the world.
He's not the only one that thought it as well, because there's another person that agrees with Gary Payton and Doc Rivers, and that's the recent fan who decided to have some kind words towards LeBron this weekend. Right. Did you see that video? Run the video.
Suck it up, LeBron.
Suck it up, LeBron.
Yes, suck it up.
I was going to say, I wanted to do a clip regarding why LeBron is hated so, like, not just hated, why does he take so much shit from fans? Like,
I wonder if he definitely hears that. I mean, if the if they picked up that, I mean, so I understand, I've been on the receiving end of not anywhere near as many fans.
Suck it up, Francis!
I've been on the receiving end of some hate, and sometimes you pick it up, and sometimes it just sounds like white noise, but that one was so clear. She was so pissed.
Yeah.
It was great.
And it's funny because it's always a female fan. That's the second time this year a female fan basically told him to suck it up. Why do they hate him so much? The man does really not much wrong.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
But I want to go back to one of the points that you said is very interesting. And since my days of watching basketball to now, where I'm watching it more intently, you can see the players that have adapted to these rule changes and made them their own. Kawhi Leonard, one of them, who his feet are phenomenally fast. Like, he's able to adjust his body and move. And I'm always a little bit confused as to how much contact, there's no contact, but how much you can really get away with, you know what I mean? Because there was one shot yesterday where Kobe was fouled at the Bulls game for one of his last 3 points, I believe. And there didn't look like there was any contact, but just enough to nudge him off. So there is rules that still, I think, similar to American football as well, it goes on the referee's judgment of what they believe.
So here's the difference nowadays, and this is why there's the only thing that, has the NBA become too soft? No. have fouls becoming too lenient. Yes, that's like to me the big difference. Put your hands up like you're going to shoot. That's a foul. If the guy is shooting and your pinky scrapes his palm, they will call it. That never happens.
So that could be our players getting too much protection, especially outside shooters. Because there was the commentator mentioned it recently. He's like, for me, if I was to play, I can't remember who it was. If I was to play in this era, I wouldn't even contest, especially a 3-point jump shot, because contesting that, there has been so many recent examples of people fouling 3-point shooters when really, like, what can't you? I know you can get in their face and try and block their vision towards the rim, but does that boundary, like, is it worth the risk?
You have to really try to get your hands on the ball first, and even if you do get the hands on the ball first, example last night, Derrick Rose and the Bulls versus the Los Angeles Lakers, he had all ball,
and then he could come down
and he came down with momentum that just you can't get away with.
It's very funny. It's similar to football. I know I'm making the reference. I've not made it in a while. Relax.
Calm yourselves.
Nonetheless, in football, you get the ball first and the player, considered a great tackle in the past, especially in certain leagues. Nowadays, no. If you get the player after it, it's considered a foul.
They're going to consider it a foul. So part of that also, by the way, has to do with the improvements to instant replay and the fact that we rewind so much in the NBA. So they go, oh, let's just make sure if that's a 3-point foul or a 2-point foul, and they see, oh, let's see if that's a flagrant foul. Take anything and put it in slow motion. Yeah. And it's going to look like a flagrant foul. Yeah. And I mean anything. And sometimes it is. When you see guys like Taj Gibson elbow players in the face, yeah, it's a flagrant foul. But at other times when guys are just going up to try to really just grab ball from behind on like a driving layup, and they come down hard and it hits them in the shoulder, they'll call that sometimes a flagrant foul, which is unfair. The moral of this is the NBA isn't too soft. They just call way too many fouls. And I don't think that's correlated together, because you still have guys freaking taking dives. You still have guys hitting the floor hard. Yeah. And the hand, like, regardless we want to say, like, oh, these guys are pussies nowadays, the hand check rule was a ridiculous rule. Yeah. It's not full contact football, it's basketball.
So the thing that I was going to ask you, put you on the spot really quick, is which players do you think would thrive nowadays back in the time where you could do all that? Like, which sort of aggressive defenders
guys like DeMarcus Cousins would have tore up the 90s in the NBA because he played like a Dennis Rodman. He played very strong. I mean, Rodman wasn't a center, but still an aggressive physical style game. And yes, guys like Steph Curry, because of how the rules have changed, and it's not Curry's fault he was born it's not his fault that he was born later than all this stuff and came in the NBA and thrived off the idea that you can roll off screens nowadays. Yeah. No, Steph Curry would have been thrown 500 feet into the stands.
True, it's true. Could you make the counter argument that they weren't used to like outside shooters like that back then?
No, of course not. I mean, like the idea of somebody taking more than 3.5, 4 threes a game was outlandish. Steve Kerr, I think, averaged 4.4 threes a game most of his season. He was primarily a 3-point shooter. Yeah. Now Curry takes 15 of them a game.
Would Kawhi still be the most?
Kawhi would be in a very well. That's the last thing I'll wrap up with is guys like Dean Smith, used to be the coach of North Carolina Tar Heels, started this entire thing about how you don't play defense with your hands. You don't play with your upper body. You play with your lower body. And he taught guys like John Calipari, Greg Popovich, some of the great basketball minds of today, that it's more important to move your feet than it is to move your hands towards a ball. So yes, in those times of the 90s, certain defenders were built up more because they were so good at hand checking. Other guys were such great defenders in general. David Robinson, Tim Duncan come to mind. Any Popovich product that's won Defensive Player of the Year were taught a certain way to play the game, and that's why Popovich thrived in the 2000s and 2010s and didn't just die out after the 90s. Granted, he had great players, don't get me wrong, because he didn't need hand checking. He didn't need reroute, using your forearms to reroute, which, by the way, if you play basketball against Ben Mankiewicz at any point, he does not believe those rules have been taken away, so he will take his fucking elbows and throw you. It's a fact.
Completely. It's still on topics, it's basketball, but I wanted to give you credit for, you know, the effect you have on football teams where you say something to them and they just become horrible?
Yeah.
Congratulations. It has the opposite effect with Damian Lillard. Good job.
Oh, I know.
Unbelievable game.
But hold on. He's not an all-star because James Harden's a better player. Don't get me wrong.
I'll leave you with that.
Don't get me wrong. Make sure to head over to watchable.com as well if you want to check out TYT Sports, a bunch of great clips. They picked up our clip on why Michael Jordan might not be the greatest player of all time, and it caused an internet outrage. It was insane. Please interact with us on Twitter with that as well. But you can also check out other TYT Network shows like Pop Trigger, like The Young Turks, like Think Tank. What else we got? Nerd Alert. We have tech stuff. We have a bunch of different shows, not just sports. Of course, we want you to basically just watch sports. But if you so choose, you may watch anything you want over at watchable.com. Make sure to check that out. And comment below with what you think about the NBA being too soft. Do you agree with Gary the Glove Payton? Great nickname.
You agree with the old lady fan?
Fran.
What's her name? Well, she wasn't old, but
Suck it up, LeBron!
suck it up, LeBron. Do your best impression.
Like,
It's fun.
favorite, subscribe goes a long way. At TYT Sports. We'll see you next time.